About 2 weeks ago, I made a video covering what happened to the 10 highest rated recruits to ever come through the University of Kentucky, and it received a ton of support and engagement. As such, I thought it'd be a fun idea to look at another historical college basketball powerhouse, known for bringing in the highest caliber recruits year after year. That, of course, being the Duke Blue Devils. Seeing as they've produced over 100 NBA players during their history, there is no doubt that there has been a ton of highly talented recruits that have come through Duke. But with this in mind, who exactly are the 10 highest rated recruits to ever wear a Blue Devils uniform? And how did their basketball careers end up panning out? Did they all go on to dominate in college and find NBA stardom, or did some end up falling short of the expectations they had coming out of high school? If you're curious where I'll be getting my recruiting ratings from for this video, I'll be using the 24/7 Sports Composite Player Rating Database to find the 10 recruits with the highest ratings. If you enjoy this type of content and want to see more, be sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel for more sports content. Now without further ado, let's get started. Coming in as the number 10 highest rated Duke recruit of all time is the power forward from the 2021 class, Paolo Banchero, with a rating of 99.94. And just an FYI, the highest rating a player can receive in 24/7 Sports database is a 1, so just some additional context there going forward. But anyways, in high school, Paolo was the living embodiment of the saying man amongst boys, because he was absolutely dominant to the point where it didn't even look fair for the teams he was going up against. And a large part of why he was so dominant and such a highly regarded recruit was the fact that he had a rare combination of power and finesse that isn't seen in many high school prospects. He could bully his way to the rim and dunk on you if need be, but also had the ability to break you down off the dribble and be a knockdown shooter from the perimeter. Upon coming to Duke, expectations for Paolo were high, as he was expected to be a primary contributor for the Blue Devils, and was also projected to be a top pick in the following NBA draft. And by all accounts, he was able to deliver on those expectations, as he'd go on to be one of the best players in the country, averaging 17 points, 7 rebounds, and 3 assists per game, en route to being named a consensus All-American. Not only that, but his impressive play caught the eyes of both scouts and NBA front offices, as by the conclusion of his freshman season, he was projected as the potential #1 pick in the draft. And when the draft did roll around, Paolo would go on to be selected #1 overall by the Orlando Magic, with expectations of being their franchise cornerstone they could build around. So far in his NBA career, Paolo has been just as good as advertised, as he's developed into one of the biggest young stars in the league. His all-around game has translated very well, and he looks like he'll be an absolute force in the league for many years to come. He dealt with some injuries earlier this season that kept him out a while, but now that he's back on the court, I fully expect him to pick up where he left off and being one of the brightest young stars in the NBA. Moving on now to the 9th highest rated recruit in Duke history, up next is the small forward from the 2016 class, Harry Giles III, with a rating of 99.94. Giles was a special athlete in high school. The fluidity, quickness, and overall athleticism he had in his game while measuring in at 6'11", 220 pounds is simply something you don't see very often. But not only was he physically gifted, he was also highly skilled as well, showing the ability to be an effective ball handler, shooter, and defender as well. And his all-around skill set, physical gifts, and two-way upside is primarily what made him so highly rated. Upon joining the Blue Devils, Giles was expected to make an immediate impact at the college level, even being selected to several preseason Player of the Year watch lists. His freshman year, however, would get off to a pretty rocky start, as he'd have to miss several games while rehabbing from knee surgery. And when he did return to the court, he unfortunately just never looked to be 100%. He certainly showed some flashes of his incredible talent, but overall, he'd go on to have a pretty underwhelming season, averaging just 11 minutes a game, alongside 3 points and 3 rebounds. Despite his disappointing freshman season, however, Giles was still viewed as an NBA draft prospect, as several NBA teams were intrigued by his potential. As such, Giles would make the decision to leave Duke early and declare for the draft, where he'd wind up being selected 20th overall by the Portland Trail Blazers and then immediately traded to the Sacramento Kings. During his time in the NBA though, he would struggle mightily with injuries, particularly with his knees, which had always given him problems even all the way back in high school. He'd get several operations done on them over the years to help mitigate the pain and soreness, but it eventually became clear that all the wear and tear on his body had zapped most of his mobility and athleticism, which his playstyle was so reliant on. He'd get his fair share of opportunities over the years, but his lack of availability and effectiveness on the floor became just too big of a concern, and he'd eventually fizzle out of the NBA entirely, now currently playing in the Chinese Basketball Association. Certainly a very disappointing result based on the hype he had coming out of high school, but Giles is just another prime example of how damaging injuries can be to an athlete's career. Up next, ranking as Duke's number 8 highest rated recruit of all time is the big man Jahlil Okafor from the 2014 class with a rating of 99.95. Measuring in at 6'11", 270 pounds his senior year, Okafor was an absolute bully at the high school level, with nobody being able to really match up with him. But in addition to his imposing size, he also had a very well polished and effective low post game, a skill set which was very reminiscent of big men from the 80s and 90s, and one that not many big men in today's basketball landscape possess. And the combination of his skill set and large physical frame is in large part what made him such a highly regarded and intriguing recruit. And during his freshman season at Duke, Okafor's old school playstyle would translate very well, as he'd go on to be named a consensus All-American after putting up impressive averages of 17 points and 8 rebounds on 66% shooting from the field. Additionally, he was one of the key pieces on a Duke team that would go on to win the national championship that year. And after establishing himself as one of the best players in college basketball as a true freshman, he was seen as one of the top prospects in the upcoming NBA draft. And after forgoing his remaining college eligibility and declaring for the draft, Okafor would go on to be selected 3rd overall by the Philadelphia 76ers. And following his rookie season, he was seemingly on the path to having a solid NBA career, putting up averages of 17 points and 7 rebounds while being named to the All-Rookie team. Unfortunately for Okafor, however, his rookie season would actually end up being the peak of his NBA career, as his playing time and production would see a drastic dip in the following years. In terms of why such a promising rookie fell off so quickly, it really came down to 2 things: his defense and his playstyle. Offensively, it quickly became clear that Okafor's playstyle was simply too outdated for the modern NBA. In a league that emphasizes fast-paced offense and lots of spacing, Okafor's low post game was slow developing, clogged the paint, and his lack of a perimeter shot only made these issues worse. And combine that with his defense that was laughably bad to the point where he became quite literally unplayable at times, and you've got the perfect recipe for a guy not built to last in the NBA. He'd serve as a bench piece for various teams over the years, but as of now, Okafor finds himself out of the NBA and playing for the Mad Ants of the G League. Coming in as the number 7 highest rated recruit in Duke history is the small forward from the 2022 class, Dariq Whitehead, with a rating of 99.96. Dariq played his final high school season at the highly regarded Montverde Academy, where he was able to put his talents on full display against some of the best high school teams in the country. Being a consensus top 3 player in his class, what got scouts really excited about Dariq was his potential as a two-way player, as he showed capabilities of being an effective 3-level scorer while also having the physical tools and instincts to be a highly versatile defender. Moving on to his freshman season at Duke, he'd have some nagging injuries that limited him early on in the year, but he'd gradually heat up as the season went on, eventually finishing up with solid averages of 8 points and 42% shooting from behind the arc. I think most Duke fans would probably agree that he never seemed fully healthy the entire season, which is why he didn't have as much of an impact as many expected. But he still had plenty of solid games and flashed tons of promise as a defender and perimeter shooter. Not only that, but he was still a great athlete with an NBA-ready frame, and a combination of all these traits led to Dariq being projected as a first-round prospect for the upcoming draft. And in the draft, he'd go on to be selected with the 22nd pick by the Brooklyn Nets. So far, he's primarily played for the Nets G League affiliate, the Long Island Nets, but he has seen some occasional NBA action, appearing in 9 games, although not being too much of a contributor. Injuries have unfortunately halted his development a bit, so he's never really been able to get into a rhythm and play up to his full potential. Hopefully going forward, he'll be able to stay healthy and land in a situation where he'll be able to develop a bit and finally put his talents on display. Coming in as Duke's 6th highest rated recruit of all time, we have another guy from the 2022 class with the big man Dereck Lively II, also with a rating of 99.96. Not only did Lively possess elite size at 7'1", 220 pounds, but he was also an elite athlete as well, as he moved very well for his size and was more than capable of playing above the rim. Despite not having a super well polished offensive game, Lively more than made up with that with his high motor and fearlessness on the court, and a combination of his physical gifts and high motor was the perfect recipe for him being a lockdown rim protector, as well as an effective rebounder and lob threat around the rim. And during his freshman campaign at Duke, the evaluations of him coming out of high school were right on the money. He didn't provide too much offensively outside of a few dunks a game, but he excelled defensively and was a solid rebounder as well. He'd go on to finish the season with averages of 5 points, 5 rebounds, and over 2 blocks a game. Although those numbers certainly don't jump off the page, his ability to protect the rim and be a lob threat offensively were and still are highly valued skills in the NBA. And as such, Lively would go on to declare for the NBA draft and was selected 12th overall by the Oklahoma City Thunder and then immediately traded to the Dallas Mavericks. And so far in his NBA career, he's shown tons of promise and has basically been the exact player people expected him to be coming out of Duke. He's certainly not filling up the stat sheet on a nightly basis, but he's playing good defense, blocking shots, throwing down dunks, and overall just contributing to winning basketball. I mean, just look at how impactful he was during the Mavs finals run just last year. Overall, Lively looks primed to be the Mavs center of the future, and I'm excited to see his development as time goes on. Getting to the halfway point now, coming in as Duke's 5th highest rated recruit of all time, we have the recently committed Cameron Boozer from the 2025 class with a rating of 99.97. Yes, I know he technically hasn't played a game yet for the Blue Devils, but he still is a Duke recruit, and this is where 24/7 Sports has him rated. So for those Duke fans that maybe aren't familiar with Cameron yet, allow this to be more of a preview of what's coming rather than a breakdown of where they are now. Cameron Boozer is obviously the son of Duke basketball alumni Carlos Boozer. He's arguably the best player in high school basketball right now, and his skill set can be best summarized with this statement by Adam Finkelstein, the director of scouting for 24/7 Sports. Quote, "Boozer is the surest thing in high school basketball. No one can match his resume of winning or is better suited to help impact winning from day one as a college freshman. He has an extremely versatile and mature two-way floor game. It's just hard to envision a scenario where he's not a successful basketball player at the highest levels for years to come, which is why he's often credited for having the highest long-term floor in the country. If that doesn't get you Duke fans excited, then I don't know what will. Obviously, he still has yet to play a game in college, so things could definitely look quite different a year from now, but based on everything I've seen and heard, Cameron looks to be about as sure of a prospect as you're going to find, and has star potential written all over him. Overall, I'm very excited to see Cam and his brother Caden suit up for Duke next season. Hopefully they're able to live up to the hype they currently have, but as of now, we'll just have to wait and see. Moving on now to the number 4 highest rated recruit in Duke history, we have the power forward Josh McRoberts from the 2005 class with a rating of 99.98. Although he wasn't the most athletically gifted or flashy player, McRoberts was one of those guys that just had a very good feel for the game. He did basically everything you wanted out of a big man. He could rebound, run the floor in transition, get some easy buckets around the rim, and played with lots of energy defensively. In addition to that though, believe it or not, he was actually kinda ahead of his time, as he was a big man with exceptional court vision and also had the ability to shoot from the perimeter. Keep in mind that this was back in the early 2000s when not a lot of big men could do those things, so the fact that he had those skill sets is what made him such a highly rated and unique prospect. In his freshman season at Duke, McRoberts got off to a pretty slow start, but would gradually pick up steam as the year went on, eventually finishing with respectable averages of 8 points, 5 rebounds, along with a steal and a block per game. Although he was projected as a potential lottery pick selection after his freshman season, McRoberts would actually make the decision to return to Duke for his sophomore year. And after running it back with the Blue Devils, he managed to improve on his averages across the board, putting up a stat line of 13 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, and over 2 blocks a game. Despite having a much improved sophomore season, however, McRoberts would actually see his draft projection fall quite a bit, and was now seen as a fringe first round to second round talent. And in the 2007 draft, he'd go on to be selected 37th overall by the Portland Trail Blazers. He'd go on to have a 10-year NBA career playing for a variety of different teams, where he primarily served as a steady rotational big man off the bench. His career wasn't anything too noteworthy, putting up career averages of 5 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists, but at the end of the day, playing for a decade in the NBA is no easy feat, so props to him on a respectable career. Getting into the top 3 now, up next we have the big man Marvin Bagley III from the 2017 class, falling just short of a perfect rating at 99.99. For those that don't remember, in high school, the hype around Bagley was insane. He played on one of the best high school teams in the country in Sierra Canyon, and despite playing some of the best competition game after game, Bagley looked absolutely dominant. Standing at 6'10", 220 pounds, his athleticism, mobility, and motor were off the charts, and this led to countless highlights and several of his mixtapes to go viral. He was overall a pretty raw prospect, not really having a reliable jumper or polished offensive game, but his raw physical traits alone is what made him such a highly regarded prospect. And in his freshman year at Duke, he was every bit as dominant as people expected him to be, putting up averages of 21 points and 11 rebounds a game on 61% shooting from the field, alongside being named a consensus All-American. As a result, Bagley was seen as one of the top prospects in the 2018 draft, with some even claiming he could be the #1 pick. He would, however, fall just short of being the top pick, as he'd go on to be selected 2nd overall in the draft by the Sacramento Kings, with many people expecting the duo of him alongside recently drafted De'Aaron Fox to be the future of the franchise. Unfortunately for the Kings, however, things just never really worked out with Bagley. He showed a lot of promise and had decent production, but a combination of injuries and lack of overall development really prevented him from reaching all the expectations placed upon him. And after 3.5 underwhelming seasons in Sacramento, he'd eventually be traded away, and since then has never really been able to find his footing again in the NBA. He's had plentiful opportunities with different teams over the years, but once again, injuries and weaknesses in his game have just continued to plague him. As of now, Bagley is currently playing for the Washington Washington Wizards, where he's essentially just been buried on the bench. Hopefully he'll be able to get some more opportunities and revive his career, but as of now, it seems like Bagley is going to go down as one of the bigger draft busts in recent memory. Coming in at the runner-up spot for highest rated Duke recruit of all time is the small forward RJ Barrett from the 2018 class with a perfect rating of 1. Barrett was a guy that had been in the national spotlight long before stepping foot into college or the NBA, in large part due to the fact he spent many years at Montverde Academy, one of the best basketball prep schools in the country. And while playing for Montverde, Barrett was not only able to put his amazing athleticism on display, but also his very mature and well-rounded game. He basically had no weaknesses, being able to shoot, dribble, pass, and defend at a high level. And after a strong junior season, Barrett would actually reclassify from the 2019 class to the 2018 class to fast-track his path to the NBA, since many people already considered him pro-ready. Upon coming to Duke, Barrett was able to follow up his dominant high school career with an equally as dominant freshman season in college. He was able to immediately establish himself as one of the best players in the country and would go on to finish the season with impressive averages of 22 points, 7 rebounds, and 4 assists per game, while also being named a consensus All-American. As a result, Barrett was obviously seen as one of the top prospects in the draft class, and would go on to be selected 3rd overall by the New York Knicks. Expectations for Barrett were sky high, as many thought he would develop into a star player and one of the franchise cornerstones for the Knicks going forward. And while he did show some great development his first few seasons, and had some pretty good production, overall he just never quite developed into the star player many hoped for. As such, the Knicks would eventually trade him away to the Toronto Raptors, where he's seemingly been a much better fit. He's more efficient than he's ever been, and has been putting up career numbers across the board the last couple of seasons. He finally seems like he's on the path to being an all-star caliber player, so we'll just have to see how he continues to develop going forward. Coming in as the highest rated recruit to ever play for the Duke Blue Devils, we've got the man currently terrorizing the ACC, Cooper Flagg from the 2024 class, also with a perfect rating of 1. Coming from the state of Maine of all places, Flagg burst onto the national scene after some dominating seasons at Nokomis Regional High School. And after enrolling at Montverde Academy for his final high school season, that's when things really started to take off for him. He was seen as an elite two-way prospect, particularly on the defensive side, where his versatility was off the charts, being a great on-ball defender and also an elite shot blocker. And although he wasn't the most refined or talented guy in the class offensively, he still flashed tons of promise as a ball handler, passer, and 3-level scoring threat as well. The thing that really takes Flagg to the next level though is his incredible motor, which only amplifies the skills he already has. Upon coming to Duke, Flagg was expected to dominate at the college level, and especially after reports came out of him going toe-to-toe with NBA superstars at the Team USA Olympic practices the previous summer, the hype was at an all-time high. So far in his freshman season, Flagg has been the focal point of a very good Duke team, and especially as of late has really started to put some dominant performances together. He's put his elite two-way potential on full display and is only going to get better as the season progresses. He obviously still has the rest of his freshman year to finish, but looking a little bit ahead, Flagg is projected to likely be the #1 pick in the upcoming NBA draft, and is seen as a guy that can be a franchise cornerstone for years to come for whichever team that drafts him. It'll certainly be very tough for him to live up to all the expectations he currently has, but he definitely seems to be heading down the right path. So that was the 10 highest rated recruits to ever come through Duke University and where they are now. As you can see, there's been a wide array of success, with some of the players going on to become NBA stars, others becoming solid role players, and others straight up draft busts. Not to mention a couple that are either currently still playing for the Blue Devils or haven't even played a game for them yet. In the end, although some of the players never quite panned out in the NBA, I'd say overall Duke did an amazing job utilizing the talent of their top recruits while in college, and also helping develop them to play at the next level. They've been one of the most historic college hoops programs for several decades now, and as long as they continue to bring in the high caliber of recruits they always have, I'm very confident that won't be changing anytime soon. Be sure to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe to the channel for more sports content. If you have any thoughts on the players in this video, or have any other schools you'd like me to make a similar video on, feel free to leave a comment down below. This is HGP signing off. As always, I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'm out. Peace.